Okay, so I removed the pin again, retracted the cylinder so it's up out of that swing assembly. Now I'm going to lift that swing assembly up, get the hoses out of the way, I hope. Well, I don't know how much of that I got before the cell phone shut off, but I ended up pulling the bolt out of there and the 2 pins for the swing hydraulics. Now supposedly this thing's going to fall off when I pull that main pin out. Okay, that came off. Now I have to take off the 2 grease fittings before I can pull the top and bottom sections out that I built 6 years ago. So let's stop right there. Pause. Okay, I have the 2 grease fittings out, and the bottom is supported by a bunch of 2x and other stuff, because as soon as you pull the grease fitting out, it wants to fall out. So here's the top one. And that was the bottom one. Go over and look. These are the 2 pieces that I made right there. This is the main swing assembly, and I have to check these holes because those are the cylinders for swing. This main pin, these 2 have been done. This is the actual back of the machine. So the top is the main boom, that's the lift cylinder. So now we have to see where all the slop is. And is it here? Well, it sure seems like that could be bushed a little, huh? And it looks like there might be bushings in there. And then here, well, those are fairly tight, but there's room for improvement. So that's the next step. Now that they're off, I can take them inside and work on these in a more friendly environment. It's really foggy. The sun's just starting to come through the low-lying clouds, and it is sticky. The humidity dew point is almost the same as the temperature. It's about 65. And it's time to go in the basement. Well, here's those 2 pieces that I had made 6 years ago to replace the cast pieces that had shattered. And you know, I must have been in a hurry, and I knew better, but there are a bunch of sharp edges on these things. So before I go any further, I've just cleaned them. I'm gonna smooth all the edges off so that they can be handled. Alright, let's see if I can do this reasonably without shaking. So this has got to be 1250, and it's 1240, 1238. One, 2, 3, 5. The top isn't terrible. 1, 2, 4, 4. And of course, if I turn it, 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 5. Should be 1.5 inches. So I think the first thing we're going to do is get a new shaft, this main shaft piece, and then we're going to probably I don't know if you can see that, but that's pretty wobbly there. You can see the space there. So I think what the next step is to buy some inch and a quarter, inch and a half, whatever the shaft is. Buy some 1-inch shaft, have it on stock. Buy some bushings for these two pieces. Bore these out so this whole thing is nice and snug. So that, I think, is part of the plan. Then I've got to go deal with the monster part. And I'm probably going to have to bush that as well. I'm going to pause just for a minute here. Okay, I've laid the main swing assembly on its back so we can see this. And that makes me think that I'm gonna have to put bush. Thank you, camera. So I'm probably gonna have to put bushings in all the pieces and line them up. I might try to take the two pieces and fit them inside here, tack a piece across them, and then bore the whole thing so it's all concentric. That would be the right thing to do. So I guess that's the next step. All right. Yeah, there's nothing else to show you here. I have to order a bunch of stuff. And then we will talk about how to tighten up the two swing hydraulic cylinders. That will be the last step, almost the last step. I then have to take these two triangular pieces and make sure they fit snug inside the back of the backhoe. Well, I think I'm going to do a recap here because it's time to order parts. So this is the piece that I made, one of the two pieces that I made to replace the cast internal part for the swing assembly. And here's the other one. And they've held together really good. But the inside is a little sloppy. So I'm going to machine those out, bore them out, whatever, to one size over 1 1/4 for a bushing. So that's probably 1 3/8, but I'll look it up when I get there. And this is also 3 inches high. And if I can't find a 3-inch bushing, it'll be 2 2s, which means I'll probably weld a plate on here when I bore it to get a 4 inches, because these two pieces fit in here. And the way they fit, notice the triangle, there's actually a big piece of angle iron mounted vertically on the back of the backhoe. One goes in the top and one goes in the bottom, and they're a little loose, so I may have to modify the edge to tighten it up or tighten up that. The bigger problem is right here, this one and this one. Now this one I've already taken out, and here it is. I had to destroy it because it was a bushing, but because this hole was oversized, they welded the bushing in. And the bushing was now also worn. And it looks like there's a bushing in there, so I'm going to have to clean that out. So those will get bushings as well, but there's not a lot of meat here. So on the top I can actually make it a little longer, and maybe on the bottom. I don't know if I'm going to hit the 2 hydraulic cylinders or not. I don't think so, but maybe I will. If I do, well, then I guess I won't use one, but I'll try. And the worst I can do is have to cut it off. And in the meantime, and then I have to order a new 1.25" shaft, because that's all worn. These are 1-inch pins that are worn. So I have to order some 1-inch, not shaft, pin stock, I guess you'd call it. Shaft, to me, assumes like a case hardened or a chrome, and that's not what we want. We want something soft so that the bushings don't wear out. So that's next, to order everything. I think I'm going to end up cutting these right off, both sides. Finding my center again, coming up to where the center is supposed to be on the 2 ends, and remounting those with a shaft in between that makes it line up perfectly. So that's the next step. Where do I start? Well, there's a lot of parts that have to fit together, and none of them are in very good shape. These pieces have to go in here, but that would assume that these are parallel with each other. And if you look at this, I have to use this because there's a weld at the bottom. But there's a fair gap there from years of getting abused, and it's pretty consistent. I mean, I have no reason to believe that the main piece of channel down below is the problem. Excuse me. So I guess the first thing is to try to figure out how to get these parallel again. I don't think my 6-ton press will do that. Then the next thought, which I should have figured out when I took it apart, is one of these is on the top, and I think it was this one because it's got the most wear. So now this guy has to go in here, like so. And then this guy has to go in here, like so. And they all have to come up like this. And you can see, well, maybe you can't see on that side. You can see that there's definitely a clearance issue there. And this one is even worse. So I've got to, I think that's the first thing, is to get that squared away. And then, and of course these guys, like everything else, are a little loose. So I now have to figure out, you know, when is parallel really parallel? But this all has to go together, like so. Excuse me. And then the piece of angle iron outside comes up. This is the back of the machine, so it goes down like this and comes up the other side. And I have exactly 11 inches between them. So here I've got 11 and 5/16. So the problem with that is that it will ride up and down a little. I suspect when I get these plates back to the right size, it'll be closer to 11. Then I have to figure out, unfortunately, what I did not do when I made these. They're all a little different. I could take those and put them in the milling machine and mill the three sides exactly the same, which is probably what I should do. And then weld a piece across here so that when I line board, everything stays stable. I think I'm going to have to try to do it all in one shot. I'm really not sold on doing it either way yet. Setting it up to try to do it all in one shot requires that I either make a nice long 3/4 inch boring bar and then get some sort of I can get a cheap $80 pedestal table drill and mount it on here and use that. I just don't know yet. I think boring these all separately is not going to get it aligned. I just don't know. I may take these guys and clean them off, put them next to each other, weld it so that they're all in one line. But it's a lot for me to try to figure out at this point. And I think I'm going to have to wait until I get the right bar in anyway. This guy is, oh, he's bent in the middle, it looks like. And he's undersized. And I think tomorrow my biggest delivery from McMaster is coming, and that's got a new shaft, new pin, I guess you'd call it. Yeah, I got mild steel. I can go harder, but I'm going to start with that. I'm getting to the point that I don't do nearly as much with the machine around the yard as I used to. But this is it. I've got a, and I mistakenly said that these two holes are all set. The bottom one is, that's where the cylinder was. This one I have yet to straighten out. That's for the main boom. I ordered bushings for this, and I ordered a new pin for that. So I was thinking on this one, because they're so miserable. This one I already chiseled out the bushing that was in there. I have not done that on the back. But I think what I'm going to end up doing is cutting this off flush here. So that I only have this much to worry about cleaning up, and actually make a new boss for the bottom, the top and the bottom. You can, well, you probably can't see here, but this has got a bushing in it. There's a nice split right there, and it's welded. And they welded it because, of course, they let it get oversized, and instead of actually cleaning it up and getting the next size bushing up, they simply threw one in there, welded it up, and said good enough, which of course now makes it not very usable. It's pretty sloppy. So looking at it as a whole, it's a lot to tackle. I think if I take it as two pieces, get these guys all squared away, and then square this away, everything will work. But as I said, that's subject to change without notice. So onward. It's now 3+ hours later, and I have decided the first thing to do is to get these plates back at 90 degrees to this frame. So I built I'll say a press, a special press. My little 6-ton won't even fit this in it. But I took a piece of steel, channel iron, I-beam, H-beam, rather, whatever you want to call it. I-beam or H-beam. And I put this really heavy post at the end and ground it to fit in here so that it doesn't try to wobble. Had to space it off from the bushing piece, so I used a piece of 1-inch flat stock. Put my 10-ton vise in, notched out the H-beam, the I-beam, to put a plate in, and then put the jack in. Made sure the jack didn't go anywhere. And I believe, because I don't like to show things that fail, but I believe that I was successful in getting this plate pretty square. I was a little surprised, but then I realized what had happened, because this is down here right on the bottom edge. It's got more leverage than where this fits in. So, of course, the pressure goes up to the top. So I have to turn this around now, and we will see what happens. I'm going to put this on pause, mount it in the camera holder, then unchain this and check that for square. Well, that side's a whole lot closer than it was. All right. Well, there's a little bit of a warp to this. So let's try in the middle and see what happens. The bottom is almost perfect, and this side is it's a whole lot better than it was. So I think what's happened, yeah, I'm catching myself on, there's a burr on the bushing that I knocked out. So yeah, 1/16 of an inch maybe. At its worst, it's probably a 1/16 of an inch. The rest of it looks really good. So I guess that's solved the first problem of many. And that's how to get these guys back to where they belong. And I'm assuming now, if I put these in, yeah, again I got them in backwards. And they fit a lot better. Look at how much I took out of that. I like it. And now, this should be, yeah, a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch of play between the top and bottom now. So that worked out really well. So I'm going to take a breather now. This is one of the two pieces I made, oh, I think 6 years ago, that the swing assembly uses. These are stuck on the back of the machine, and the 1.25" shaft for the main boom goes through there. And I had put these together simply with nuts and bolts. A little warm. These had loosened up slightly when I took it out. So before I actually bore this for the 3-inch bushing that goes in here, I decided I'm going to have to make this a little more stable than just bolting the 5 plates together. So what I just did, and what I'm going to do, is to weld it, at least on 2 sides. If you can see, I've notched this out on this side and the other side, being careful of my grease hole, which I'm going to have to push the grease out before I weld, so that I can weld up everything there. And then, just to be on the safe side, I think I'm going to weld up these bolts, at least tack them on one side or a couple sides, so that they can't loosen up again. So hopefully I won't even need them if I weld this, but I don't know. This thing takes an awful beating, so whatever I can do to keep it stable is what I'm doing. So I just finished this one, and I cut these ears off on both sides. They really weren't doing anything except getting in the way, especially when I try to spin this in my lathe. So that's one. Now I'm going to do the other. Hopefully it doesn't get too smoky here in the basement, because my smoke detector will go off. A couple of hours later, maybe 1 hour after I started the second one, I'm all set, ready to weld. Now, I guess I should clean them first. This one I decided to try to use my grinder, and I just ground between the 5 plates so that I could weld and grind it back down, because I can't leave anything showing. And this one, I actually decided to use the milling machine. Only, well, mainly because I was going through cutoff discs really fast on my grinder, and it was getting pretty smoky with that one, whereas this wasn't too bad. I think this is just it's an added extra. The pieces are going to get welded, but they've already got the bolts in them really tight. And then I'm going to have a 3-inch bushing in here, so I really don't think anything's going to move after I'm done here. So let's we'll take a walk outside and see if it's dry enough to weld. Okay, well, I took those two pieces outside and brought all my welding stuff, and it was muggy as all get out. Turned on the welder, was just setting up the first piece, and it started to rain again. So now we're going to work on this piece, and this is going to have some major work done to it. I'm going to take this right out of here, this shoulder, this bushing, this shoulder. Well, I already took this bushing out. But before I go any further, I have to make sure I can get the new ones back in the same spot. Just in case I go oversized with something, I can reposition them and weld them in the right spot. So that's what I'm up to now. Well, something's not right. I guess I can live with that. So now two and 3/4 and 4 1/4 from that edge. Three-quarters, 3 1/4. Alright, so that hole is centered. One and 3/4 to the bushing, and 3 1/4. So they're centered. I would hope they are, but I wanted to make sure. And now, I don't know if you heard that, so these holes are centered. This way is fine, left to right. I have to get from here down, but I've got a weld here and a weld here, so I'm going to put a block here, and another piece across so that I have something flat and measure up. And do that on both sides, and then figure out what that block is that I'm using. Quarters and 2 1/4. That was 3/4 and 2 1/4. Okay, 3/4 and 2 1/4. Well, it was 2 inches 15 thousandths, so we're going to call that 2 inches. So now I'm going to calculate all my centers. Okay, we have our numbers. Basically, the channel is a 5-inch channel. So if it's 5 inches, then all I have to do is measure 2.5 in and come up to verify where I am in the middle of that. So that's what I got out of those measurements. It showed that it was centered. The bottom, which is how far up, there's 2 different ways of doing it. You can take the 3/4 and subtract it from 2 1/4, and then add my 2-inch block, or you add the 2 of them together and divide by 2, and you still get an 1.5 inch hole. Well, 1.5 inches is where the center is, plus the 2 inches is 3.5 inches. And if you look at the, try to look at the tangent, it's 3.5 inches right on the edge of the hole. So we know what we can, where we can put them back. Now I'm going to take all this stuff off and take out this bushing too. Probably I'm going to see if this fits in my big lathe. That will determine how much I'm going to do to these holes. I'd like to make them big enough to make my own bushing with the shoulder on the top and put the whole thing in and weld it in on both sides. But we'll see how I'm going to do that.